Well, good evening from London, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you might be, and welcome to another lockdown lecture with Harif. It's great to be back after our Pesach break. Yes, we've done over 70 of these lockdown lectures, and they're all available to see on our website, which is www.harif.org. Our organization aims to raise awareness of the history and culture of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. So do please sign up to our mailing list if you're not already there, because that way you'll be able to get login details to our online lectures. We're 6 volunteers actually, and we do our best to put on interesting and varied programs. Please do also check out our sister website, which is Point of No Return blog, which is updated daily and keeps you informed of the news. This session is being recorded, and the recording will be up on the website in a couple of days. And we're also live streaming to the Harif Facebook page. If you have any questions or comments for our speaker, please do pop them in the chat at the bottom of your screen. So the topic today is Judeo-Arabic, and how different is it from Arabic? Well, if, like me, you've grown up hearing Judeo-Arabic, you would probably say that the language is mostly composed of swear words and curses, but I hope that's not the case. So to discuss the similarities and differences between Judeo-Arabic and Arabic, we are very privileged to have with us an expert on the subject, Professor Benjamin Hary. Professor Hary is the director of NYU, that's New York University Tel Aviv, which has branches in 3 different countries. Is that correct?
I'll say a few words.
Yeah, he's going to tell us a little bit about it. And he is also professor at the Skirball Department of Hebrew and Judaic Studies, and he's the current president of the Israel Association for the Study of Language and Society. He has authored several books and numerous articles. So without further ado, over to you, Benny. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lynn. Before I go into thanking the Harif organization, I want to say that when I was asked to give the lecture, I picked up this date and I didn't notice that it's beginning of Yom HaZikaron. It's a very somber day in Israel. I'm based now in Tel Aviv. It's a very somber day where we remember our fallen soldiers and the people who died in terrorist attacks in Israel. So I wouldn't have chosen this evening, but since I chose it, I didn't want to change, but I wanted to say a word about this. So as Lynn said, I'm based in Tel Aviv. I'm speaking from Tel Aviv, and I direct the NYU branch in Tel Aviv. And maybe I should say a word or two about NYU. New York University is actually the largest private university in the US, and it has 3 major campuses in New York, in Shanghai, and in Abu Dhabi. And the students can apply to any of those campuses and get their degrees. But in addition, they have other 14 sites all over the world where they can go for 1, 2, or 3 semesters during their degree. So it's a wonderful opportunity for them to discover the world. We have NYU campuses in Buenos Aires, in Accra, Ghana. We have NYU London, which is right in the middle of town in London. And we also have NYU Tel Aviv. We specialize in innovation, entrepreneurship. We specialize in biology and chemistry, Middle Eastern studies and Jewish studies, and we teach Hebrew and Arabic. And that's what we do here in Tel Aviv. So I want to thank again Lynn and all the organizers in Harif for inviting me for this talk. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if I can get. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about Arabic-speaking Jews, about Judeo-Arabic, and about some of the history, how it came about. And for about, I don't know, about 20 minutes, and for about 20 other minutes, I will show you some differences in some Judeo-Arabic dialects that I picked. And I could have picked many more, but I just had to choose some. And I'll also try to, I don't want to bore you too much with linguistic details, because I understand that's not your field. So from time to time, we will also hear some post-vernacular and not so post-vernacular activities in Judeo-Arabic. So I have some YouTube and some things to spice things up. So the way I approach the whole topic is from a social linguistic point of view. That is, we have social linguistic variables. We know very well that young people speak, so age is a social linguistic variable, right? We know that young people speak differently than older people. We know that women might speak differently than men. We know that people in London might speak differently than people in Atlanta, Georgia. So we know that these are social linguistic variables. We haven't talked, I would say, only in the last 20 to maybe 30, not even 30, maybe 20 years, we've started talking about religious affiliation and identity as a social linguistic variable. So my claim, and of course, my friends in the profession like Yehudit Henschke and other people who are here online, we claim that it is possible that you might speak differently, even subconsciously, for your religious background. So if I take examples from English and from the United States, which I know much better than the UK, you excuse me. So we know that there is what we call Jewish English, or some people call it Yeshivish, which is quite different than standard English. And at the same time, when I was a fellow in the University of Michigan, I used to go to Dearborn and record people, and I discovered what I now term Muslim English, quite interesting features. In addition to that, of course, we have Christian English, which we call Christianese, and that's the way evangelical Christians speak English. Fascinating. Maybe some other time we can talk about the 3 different Englishes connected to religious affiliation. And now, and it doesn't mean that if you speak Jewish English, you speak Jewish English all the time. No, no, no. You are bi or multi-dialectal. That is, if you speak in a non-Jewish environment, you speak the typical standard English or whatever other English you have. But if you are within your own crowd in a synagogue, you might say that on Shabbat, I went to shul and davened and so on and so forth. But it's not just the lexicon, mind you, it's also all parts of the language. So I was bar mitzvahed in Los Angeles, right? You add the ED, or I'm going to kasher the dishes, or this is halachically very good. So look at halachically, comes from halacha, but you have ik, ali, you have all the adjective English suffixes, the adverb English suffixes, etc. So from all this kind of approach, social linguistic approach, we created our Sarah Benor and myself, we just recently published this book, so you could look at it. It's actually online. You can find, if you Google it, it's free online. So I hope the publisher doesn't hear me. So you can find it, but I'm very, very happy that people read. And well, I'm not going to talk about else. I'm not going to go there. So we are, believe in the Jewish linguistic spectrum, and this basically is our main thesis. And our main thesis, let me move this around so it'll be easier, and I'll read it with you. Our main thesis are wherever Jews have lived and either wish to distinguish themselves from the neighbors, or sometimes encouraged or sometimes even forced to distinguish themselves. They did so in clothing. So we all know that if we walk with a kippah, we have a statement, right? Or when Jews were forced during the Second World War to wear a yellow a triangle, it was clear that they wanted to distinguish themselves. So we distinguish in clothing, in food, in ritual, but also in language. The problem is that most of us are not linguists, so we can't really hear or notice necessarily the differences. So Jews have spoken and written somewhat differently from the non-Jews around them. The languages have this, and it's a continuum. So the languages have differed by as little as the addition of a few Hebrew or Aramaic words, or by so much that innovations occurred in all areas of the language in such ways that they have become largely unintelligible to outsiders. If you take this thesis and you change it with Christians, you'll get the same results. With Muslims, you'll get the same results. As a matter of fact, my claim is even stronger. If you change the Jews with an oppressed minority or a minority that think that they are oppressed, you will get the same results. So if you look at 1960s in New York, the gay community, put gays here and you'll get the same results. Same results, different language, different food, different clothing, etc. So, so this is a very interesting sociolinguistic thesis that we've been working with for about 20 or so years. Okay, now why doesn't it want to move? Oh, it moves. And we ask ourselves some questions. How do Jews distinguish themselves linguistically? Okay, I'm going to show some examples here. What constitutes a Jewish language variety? Do Jews speak different languages, or maybe different dialects, or maybe different ethnolects? Or I prefer the term religiolect. So what is it? Can we call it a language? What is it? When I talk about Judeo-Italian, or Judeo-Farsi, or Judeo-Arabic, what is it? What exactly is it linguistically? What are some similarities and differences between Jewish languages in different times and places? So I see some interesting issues between Judeo-Italian in the 16th century Venezia and Jewish English in London in the 21st century. And that would be interesting to check and see. And how are Jewish language varieties different from the dominant languages, and in what ways are they bearers of Jewish culture? We're going to talk about that. How is Judeo-Arabic different from Arabic, right? How does language help to construct identity and create community boundaries? So sometimes when we create these features in the Jewish languages, we create boundaries around ourselves to make sure that we are in group. We speak in group as opposed to out group. And how can a model of Jewish languages help analyze Christian or Muslim languages, migrant languages, languages of any diaspora? The questions are endless. And this is what we've been doing in the last, I suppose, 20 or 30 years. So the question is it a dialect? Is it an ethnolect? Is it even, I use the term castlect, and I have some examples from Malayalam down there. Not so crucial, but I prefer the term religiolect. Not everybody agrees with me. This has been discussed in the literature, but I like to look at it as a language variety with its own history and development, which is used by a religious community. So I'm not saying that it's always limited to that religious community. We see in the United States that many people, I actually was at Chicago airport and I heard a Catholic woman ask the person to schlep her suitcase, but she's not Jewish, so how come she uses Jewish English? Well, it's created within the community, and for various reasons, it comes out of the community to the general community. In the United States, of course, it's because of the media, because of Seinfeld, Woody Allen, The Nanny, you name it. So it's definitely developed in large cities in the United States, but came out to the general community. So I will also show in Judeo-Arabic what I call crossing religious boundaries. It can cross religious boundaries. So it may sound that I contradict myself, but I don't. It's created here and then come out. Okay, so you see, this is if we start looking at Jewish language varieties from antiquity to the 21st century, you see that maybe here is the dispersion of the Jews after the destruction of the Second Temple. You see from here how Jews went all around. You definitely see the yellow, which shows us Judeo-Arabic. Look how prominent Judeo-Arabic is. And then, and then you see what kind of languages we have, either Malayalam down in Kerala, in India, or Tajik, or Farsi, or you see some of the examples that we give here. I should mention Yiddish and Ladino, which are really different because they left their own origin, right? They left their own place of origin. Yiddish in the Rhine Valley and Ladino in Spain, and went to other places. So clearly the languages became even more distinct and with some sort of different histories. But you all know that. I don't need to get into that. And also we like to look at the status of the languages. So this is the expanded grade intergenerational disruption scale. So you see that when a language is number one, it's a national language, it's not in danger, but most Jewish language varieties, at least the older ones, are threatened or shifting, or Judeo-Arabic we claim is an 8A, moribund, and they're also very much connected to migration, and we'll talk about it as well. And many times people ask me, are you sad that that Judeo-Arabic will cease to exist in 40 years? Well, number one, it's not an issue of sad. It's definitely, I think we still have, for example, native speakers of Egyptian Judeo-Arabic. We still have a few, and of course, the time is of essence, and I try to interview as much as I can and to record as much as I can and to look at manuscript and compare to modern time as much as I can. So that's important to preserve and document. But remember, it's like biology. Languages die and languages are being born. So it is true that because of globalization and the power of English in the world and Chinese, probably if we have today 7,000 or 8,000 languages in the world, I don't know how we count them, but about 7,000, it will probably be left only with 1,000 languages in 100 years. That is correct. But on the other hand, if we talk about Jewish language varieties, we also have new languages. How do I mean? We have Ladino, Judeo-Spanish, but we have what we call South American Jewish Spanish, modern Jewish Spanish. That is because there are very lively, strong Jewish communities in either Mexico or Buenos Aires, and the Jewish identity is important. They redevelop a new language variety in order to distinguish their identity. So you will see that in this modern Jewish Spanish. So I call it Jewish Spanish rather than Judeo-Spanish, which is the older Ladino type. And maybe I'll get into it more a bit later. So we have some examples. We have some examples for numbers. It is, I don't know how accurate it is. It's taken from a few years back, and I'm not sure I can stand by those numbers. It's very hard to do statistics. But it is true that Judeo-Tat probably only around 20,000 people still speak, and it's a threatened language variety. So you see some interesting examples here. Yeah, Judeo-Greek, only a few, maybe still, maybe in Athens still some. I did interview one or two, but it doesn't have necessarily a good future. As far as Judeo-Arabic, we don't know, because maybe 20 years ago, I would tell you, no way Judeo-Arabic is going to cease to exist. On the other hand, they're really developing a very nice modern Jewish community in the UAE, in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi. I go there often to teach at NYU Abu Dhabi. I don't know that it will be a new Judeo-Arabic because most people there speak English and not necessarily Arabic. So I don't know that we will get a new Judeo-Arabic variety there. But I wouldn't. We'll see. Let's see what happens. It's very hard to predict. You know, the two things that you don't want to predict. You don't want to predict political events in the Middle East. You don't want to do that. And you don't want to predict future of languages, what will happen with languages. You don't want to predict that either. So it's all in theory. So Judeo-Arabic itself, so what it is, so we know that the literature is on Jewish topics written by Jews for Jewish readership. Why do I say Jewish readership? Because it's written in Hebrew characters. So I can't expect non-Jews to read it because you really have to know Hebrew characters in order to be able to read it. The variety itself has elements of classical and post-classical Arabic. It has dialectal components. It has pseudo-correction, hyper and hypo-corrections, and some of them even have become standardized as part of the dialect. And all of this together, where in regular Arabic, in standard Arabic, you don't have it so mixed. You have it either you have the Fusha, you know, the written formal language, or the Amiya, the colloquial language. Although I must admit that things there also start to mingle as well. So Arabic is on a continuum all the way from on the one hand the literary language to literary formal language, or to the other side, which is the colloquial. But we see in recent years, despite the fact that Arabic is so conservative, and despite the religious element that this is Al-Arabiya, the language of God, we can't change it. Despite that, we see some differences. In Egypt, for example, in the last 20 to 30 years, there have been a lot of new novels written in Egyptian Arabic written. And that's something new that's happening. So that's closer to Judeo-Arabic situation. And and also, also in Judeo-Arabic, we use Hebrew characters, as you see. We have elements of Hebrew and Aramaic vocabulary and grammar. We have the style of the sharh, which is a special genre that composed, a special genre that that reflects literary translation of Jewish religious and liturgical texts from Hebrew and Aramaic into Judeo-Arabic. So we have Passover Haggadah, we have Book of Esther in Judeo-Arabic, we have a Book of Genesis in Judeo-Arabic, etc. By the way, we have this in most Jewish language varieties, okay? We call it Taich in Yiddish, or Ladino in Judeo-Spanish, or we call it Tamsir in Judeo-Italian, etc. And we have some cross-religious boundaries, as I mentioned before. So users began to employ early forms of Judeo-Arabic already before Islam. We have some evidence for this before Islam. Gordon Newby wrote about that but around the 8th century, as a linguistic result of the Arab conquest, it gained prominence, and users have been using it in various forms up until today. And if you look at the history, I try to show you that we have medieval, late, and modern. And if you do more refine of the phases, pre-Islamic, early, which will be 8th, 9th century, classical, the height of the literature from the 10th to the 15th century. Later, we have 15 to 19 and contemporary 1920. We do have changes in the history. We have change that I call change 1, change 2, change 3. Not going to talk much about it, but in general, here you see that I argue for a possible linear connection between medieval, late, and modern Judeo-Arabic. Not everybody agrees with me here, but I think I have some evidence for this linear connection. You can ask me, what kind of evidence? Well, sometimes even in 19th century Judeo-Arabic text from Egypt, the translation of Genesis, I see traces of Saadia Gaon's tafsir from the 10th century. So there must be some sort of linear connection. I talked about the changes. So in the 10th century, we have the appearance of Saadia's tafsirs, the first well, not the first, but among the first translation of the Bible into Judeo-Arabic, and the rise of the Arabicized orthography in Judeo-Arabic, which Blau wrote about it a lot. In the second change, the 15th century, we have reduction in the contact between Jews and Muslims. There is more separation. We start seeing Jewish neighborhoods, Hart el-Yahud in Egypt, Melah in North Africa, Qa'at el-Yahud or Gat el-Yahud in Yemen. So there's more separation and more dialectal elements penetrate Judeo-Arabic and the rise of the Hebraist orthography. In the 20th century, the third change, with national movement, in the outbreak of the conflict, we have the emigration of Jews from Arab-speaking areas, as you all know, and the religion losing ground. And I wrote here the change both about the near loss of the religion. Like, maybe I wouldn't be so strong today. I probably wrote it a few years back, but definitely near loss or serious reduction. Now, I can skip this. This is an interesting diagram that I have here. You see here would be if this is Judeo-Arabic, here would be the dialects. You see number 4. And here it would be the more literary, but you see the later we are in history, the linguistic distance between the colloquial and the literary is getting narrower and narrower in Judeo-Arabic because of the history. Right, and here it's another diagram of the continuum. You see, we have literary written Judeo-Arabic, we have the dialectal, but we also have influence from Hebrew and Aramaic, from regular Arabic dialects, and from standard Arabic. So it's really like any other language. Basically, it's a mixed language. When I say like any other language, people ask me why. I say, well, you know, English is a mixed language as well. When you go to a restaurant, you don't think that the word restaurant is not from English, but it doesn't come from English. It comes from French to English. So English is also a mixed language. That's normal to have mixed languages. Nothing wrong with that. All languages in the world are mixed, even Esperanto. Okay. And here, let's talk a little bit about the history. I'll do it fast because I'm sure Noam Stillman did it with you. But in medieval Judeo-Arabic, as I said, we have pre-Islamic Judeo-Arabic. We have the famous poet Samuel ibn Adia, who was Jewish, but we don't know that he wrote differently than non-Jews. We have the early Judeo-Arabic. There we had the phonetic orthography, very interesting because we could learn a lot about the spoken language from the orthography, from the spelling system. And then we have 3 giants, Saadia Gaon, Yehuda Halevi, and Maimonides. And I think look at Saadia Gaon, a book of relief and opinions, Kitab al-Imanat wal I'tiqadat, huge, fantastic, very high level literature. Of course, the tafsir to classical Judeo-Arabic as well. And then we have Yehuda Halevi, Kitab al-Khazari, or the Kuzari. And then we have Maimonides, of course, and Guide for the Perplexed, etc. Then I should mention the Cairo Geniza, where we have tons of stuff. It's a huge archive of Judeo-Arabic, all the way from the 8th century, all the way to the 19th century. And I can talk more about it in Q&A if people want me to talk about. In late and modern Judeo-Arabic, we have the development of the shuruh that I mentioned before. And in contemporary, we now have popular literature, and something that I'll emphasize later, the development of regional dialect centers among Arabic-speaking Jews. For example, Libyan, Moroccan, Tunisian, Algerian, Egyptian, Yemenite, even Palestinian Judeo-Arabic. We have Aaron Geva published a few books on the Judeo-Arabic of Tiberias, Safed, Haifa, Peki'im, and more, and we have some interesting features there as well. If we look at periodicals in the 19th, the 20th century, we have in Bombay an interesting periodical in Iraqi Judeo-Arabic, connected again to migration. Iraqi Jews moving to India, in Algeria, In Cairo, we have the wonderful periodical Misraim, which helped me a lot in detecting stuff on Egyptian Judeo-Arabic. In Tunis, in Tanja, in Morocco, and of course in Baghdad, Yeshurun. So these are some periodicals that I mentioned. In the 40s to the 60s, most speakers moved to Israel, France, Canada, Mexico, US, or I should say also the UK. Oh, I shouldn't forget that. I think we have a lot of Iraqi Jews, I think, probably near Gold Screens once I visited there. So I had a lot of fun speaking to Iraqi Jews. And of course, result of political development. We still have sizable Jewish community in North Africa today, in Morocco, but I must say that many of them speak French and not necessarily Moroccan Judeo-Arabic. In Tunisia, some still speak Tunisian Judeo-Arabic. In Jerba, there's still a community, but you know, it's probably dwindling. Let's hear a little bit, and this is Shema Israel recited by a Yemenite, and you'll even hear the Yemenite Judeo-Arabic dialect. You'll hear instead of the qaf, the gaf, right? So try to listen. So we have first in Hebrew, then in Aramaic, then in Yemenite Judeo-Arabic. Let's see if we can get it going. It takes a second.
شمع إسرائيل أذنوي ألهينو أذنوي أحد شمع إسرائيل أذنوي لوهانو أذنوي حاد اعلم يا إسرائيل أن الله ربنا الله الوحيد وأوهبتا إذ أذنوي ألهاقا بخل لبو بخو بخل نفشقا وبخل مذاقا وثرحان يثأذن إلهاق بخل لبخو بخل نفشق بخل نخصا.
That's Aramaic. And now Arabic.
وأحبب الله ربك مخلصا بكل قلبك ونفسك ووجدانك وهايو هالدبوريم هو إلا أشار آنخي مصوقا هيم على الأبواب ويهان كتغمي هو اللي دانو بفكد الله يا معدين على الباخ وتكون هذا الكلمات التي أمرك بها اليوم في قلبك وشنينتم لبنا.
I think we'll skip the rest, but just to get an example of a Yemenite in this case. So let's look at more examples. So we have Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic. Here is a Haggadah. In Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic, you see here on the right-hand side, Manishtana, right? Bimat Khayeret Hadi Leila Min Kul Layali. I don't speak Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic, but you have some features there. This is taken, I collected it from the Cairo collection. It's a 18th, 19th, 20th century, it says here 19th century manuscripts. And you see this is from 1892, April, you see Fishar Fried. Hada Kitab al-Haggadah. You see, very soon I'm going to publish this Haggadah. And look here how nice it is. The manuscript is very well, very easily identified. Look how clear it is, very nice, neat handwriting. And you see, إيش السبب تغيرت الليلة هذه من جميل ليالي. إن في جميل ليالي ليس إحنا مرمسين حتى ولا مرة واحدة. والليلة هذه مرتين. You see, مرتين. It's very nicely done in Egyptian Judeo-Arabic. I'm always delighted to do it. In my Seders, we do a lot of Egyptian Judeo-Arabic, although I'm not from there. And this is another example from the Book of Esther, also kind of modern Judeo-Arabic, also 19th century. As you can see, the manuscript is very easily identifiable, also will be published soon. وكان في أيام الزشيري هو الزشيري المتسلطن من الهند وأين الحبش. You have the translation there, and you all know the story of Esther, and it goes on and on and on. So we want to get to the nitty-gritty now, right? We want to go and talk about some of the differences. So if we look at Egyptian Judeo-Arabic, I'm going to stand up a little bit. I am with shorts, but you won't see that. You know how it is in Zoom. I have a nice shirt, and that's important. So, so if we look at phonetics and phonology, right, that is the study of sound, look that in Egyptian Judeo-Arabic, we have preference for the vowel U. So if in standard Egyptian Arabic or Cairene, let's say I'm really speaking about Cairo, you say dilwati for now. In Egyptian Judeo-Arabic, in Cairene Judeo-Arabic, dulwati, you see the U there, dulwati. You say shab for people, shub. You have akhur for another as opposed to akhar. Now, how do I know that? Okay, so I started working on those manuscripts already for my dissertation in 1987, when I got my PhD. I'm not young. And in 92, I published my first book, Multiglossa in Judeo-Arabic. And I noticed that when I deciphered the manuscripts, I noticed that they put, even for short U, they put a vav. In the handwriting, so I didn't understand, because the vav might signify a long U, but no, not in Egyptian Judeo-Arabic. So I started to understand the phonetics from the written language. But this wasn't good enough. And luckily, I have a colleague here in Israel who started recording, before I recorded, Egyptian Jews in Bat Yam and in Ashdod. And his realizations, his data really corresponded to my data. And this was really a eureka. This was really a bingo. So I tried to look for phonetic elements in the written language. He did it in the spoken language, and we got the same results. So this was really wonderful when we found each other. I'm talking about Gabi Rosenbaum, who was also the head of the Israeli Academic Center in Cairo. So, okay, so the first one is the preference for the vowel U. Second interesting stuff that we see is the shift from A to A, long A, especially in words originated in Hebrew. So batala for in vain, or shulhan, long A, okay? We have a shift from long A to short A, especially when it precedes the groniyot, the ayin, the ha, and the ha. So instead of, you'll hear bita, long, in standard Egyptian Arabic, in Judeo-Arabic, bita, not long. Or ilahna, for our God, instead of ilahna in standard Arabic, okay? Weakening of the voiced pharyngeal fricative. What does it mean? The ayn is very strong in Egyptian Arabic. In Judeo-Arabic, less. So we have hidashar rather than hidashar, right? Or even ahad for pact instead of ahad with an ayn. We suddenly have the existence of the voiceless bilabial stop, the p, which we don't have in standard Arabic, right? So we say il pilagshim, pildash, we have p. Now, emphatization in words originating in Hebrew. So in Hebrew, we say karpas, and suddenly in Egyptian Arabic, we karfos, sword. Okay, it becomes velarized, right? Same thing. The name Eliezer. It's definitely emphatic here. And on the other hand, we have the opposite, the de-emphatization. So instead of a sad in nus, it's nus, without sad, with a sin. Or akhdar, not akhdar with a do, but with a dalet, akhdar. So less de-emphatization. We see it in Egyptian Arabic, but mostly among women, Muslim, right? Jews, we have it all across the community, men and women. Then we have some interesting stuff going on in morphology and in syntax. So for example, the third plural independent pronoun, they, in Egyptian Arabic, it's humma. In Judeo-Arabic, we have humman. We have the nun at the end. The masculine singular demonstrative pronoun, da, in Egyptian Arabic, de, in Judeo-Arabic. So instead of da el-bab, we say de el-bab. Suddenly, instead of doli, we have hadoli, ilayam hadoli these days for the demonstrative pronoun. Interrogative pronouns is very interesting. It's very typical in Egyptian Arabic to have a and to have le and to have izai. You say izayak, how are you, right, in Egyptian Arabic? And usually these are come at the end of the sentence. So you say ismak a, what is your name? You put a at the end. In Judeo-Arabic, in Egyptian Judeo-Arabic, you have esh and adesh and lesh and kef, more like Palestinian, and you put it in the beginning. So esh da istagel. That is, what is this that you hurried? In standard Egyptian Arabic, it will be da istagel a at the end, and not esh, but a. Now, I must say that a lot of it has to do with migration issues. Egyptian Jews that moved from the Syro-Palestinian area to Egypt, etc. So a lot of it has to do with migration as well. Interesting here is the verbal pattern fu'ul. We say khulus was redeemed as opposed to khilis in standard Arabic. Kuturti, you increase, as opposed to kitirti, ee in standard Egyptian Arabic, and in Egyptian Judeo-Arabic. And I remember once I was interviewed some people in Cairo, and I asked them about khulus, and they said, no, we don't say that, we don't say that. But my grandfather, sometimes I hear him say khulus. So Jewish languages in general like to preserve old features, old linguistic features, and that's an old linguistic feature that Jews have kept. And of course, a very famous, the end dialects in the imperfect. As you may know, in the Arab world, we divide the dialects between west and east, somewhere along Alexandria, or maybe west of it in the border with Libya, west and east. So the feature for the east would be ana arif and ihna nerif. But in the West, it's ana nerif and nihna nakhdu, at the end. That's weird. But Cairo, only among Jews, you will see the end dialects. You see this Maghrebi feature among Cairene Jews. And again, because a lot of Cairene Jews moved there from Morocco. So this is connected to migration, but it's typical of Egyptian Jews. And we have more and more here, more features. I don't think I should go over all those features. I give you a nice taste. Interesting is the verb to come. You say gat it and go, not like standard Arabic. Okay. Oh, this is also very interesting. Extensive use of the negation particle lam. You don't see lam in the dialect in Egypt, but in Egyptian Judeo-Arabic, there is a lot of lam. And with perfect verbs, lam ult, lam kan, very unusual in Arabic. You have it with the imperfect, lam tikhbir, she will not inform, and you have it in many more instances. And of course, the use of the adverb kamana instead of kaman. Lynn, how are we doing with time? Should I continue? Should I start to wrap up?
5 more minutes? 5 more minutes?
Good.
Yeah.
So I want to tell you that I'll just give you examples and I won't get into it. So here I have some examples of linguistic features of Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic. Most interesting is in Muslim, they say gal, and in Jewish, they say qal, ga and qa. Here we have, we have other phonological features. We have in morphology, gelet is I or you said. In Jewish, qaltu for I said, and qalt for you said. Really different, really different. I also interesting here, the Christian variety, I put the C there, but we won't get into it. I'm happy to share the this PowerPoint with you, Lynn, if you want to put it online, that I'll be happy to do that. So syntax and lexicon. Here you have some interesting features of Libyan Judeo-Arabic. The most interesting is the short vowel, reduced vowel, So we have chelb instead of kalb, or qemch instead of gumt, I woke up, etc., etc. This is in Tripoli. Then you have other features there, and then you have here, what's interesting is the crossing, oh, where is the Yemenite? Okay, it disappeared. We have here crossing religious boundaries. So you see how some Egyptian, Christian, and Muslim goldsmith use what they call Ibri. They use some Judeo-Arabic. So crossing, this is because of professional subgroup, right? So they might say Yafet from Yafeh, for good, nice, okay? So very, very interesting. And then you have some Arabs use the term Hamin for children in the 20th century Tiberia. On the other hand, in Egyptian, we use the word Sharia. Can you believe it? Sharia for Torah and Allah for God. This is a real crossing religious boundaries. Okay, with many, many of these examples. And I do want to end the talk by talking a little bit about post-vernacular activity. Judeo-Arabic is still alive. We have in Ashdod, the Andalusian Orchestra, we have radio broadcast in Morocco, and we have theater, the Canadian actor Gad El-Malek. We have films, for example, the film Farewell Baghdad, Mafriach Hayonim is the film that all of it is in Judeo-Arabic, in Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic, fantastic film. And then we have recent development, some singers that sing in Moroccan and in Yemenite, even mainstream Miri Masika in Israel sings some in Judeo-Arabic, and I want to give you two examples. So let me give you Neta and then Awa. Okay, it'll be maybe 2 minutes here and 2 minutes there, and we'll wrap up for questions. Is that a good plan, Lynn?
That's a great plan, thank you.
Okay, let's hear 2 minutes of Neta and then 2 minutes of Awa. Neta, Moroccan Judeo.
الحباب عملوا الولاء وعرضوه على زهر الفاسية تجيه وتغنيه ونشوفوا زين على شدوي ونشوفوا زين على شدوي هو ليبيا كوانيكيا هو ليبيا كوانيكيا وانا نحلف لي اذا يشبالي انا نحلف لي اللي يشبالي عمري ما ندوزه وقول لي يا الغادي جربان تعلي ونقولي بكيت هاي الجوز عفان قولي واش فيك يا بنتي.
So what she does here later, she really, it's a tribute to the famous Moroccan Jewish singer Zohar Al-Farsia. And I understand from older Moroccans that she did an amazing job imitating here. On the other hand, the group Awa, Yemenite Judeo-Arabic, they use it with contemporary beat. So listen to them. Again, 2 minutes, we're ending there.
شامك زابد رهداي حوطاي في شامان
Oh, sorry. What happened here? So So I hope that I gave you a little taste of some of the differences between Arabic and Judeo-Arabic, and of course, some other examples that I was able to bring. So I'm very happy to open it for discussion. We have 30 minutes, and wherever you want to go, I'll be happy to go if I can help. I can't promise that I'm happy.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Benny. That was an amazingly clear and succinct overview of the whole question, which obviously is terribly complicated and very technical. But I think you made it very interesting and lively. I think we already have some questions. Let me just see. Yeah, Vivian Bowell makes the point that the Arabic, Judeo-Arabic and Egyptian Arabic seem largely the same. The words seem largely the same. The only difference is in the pronunciation. And in Cairo, they spoke mainly. Sorry, I've lost it.
She also mentioned French. Yeah.
Yes.
It's all true. Vivian, it is all true. First, I want to say that when I talk about Egyptian Judeo-Arabic, I talk about maybe from the 16th to the 20th century. So so I try to lump it all together. It is true that many Egyptian Jews, especially in the 20th century, spoke French, very true, especially in Alexandria and in other places and other languages, and they were mixing some languages, but still there is an issue of religiosity. And that also happens in English today, in Jewish English. The more religious you are, the more distinct Judeo-Arabic you will speak. So, for example, you would use Shulhan or Batalah in Egyptian Judeo-Arabic if you're more and more religious, and if you are speaking in a religious context. So it all depends where and how. I was trying to give an overview, but of course you will find a lot of Egyptian Jews in the year 1905 that spoke perfect Egyptian Arabic, not even Jewish Arabic, but when they spoke to their neighbors, they would prefer the vowel U. So they would say sha'ub but not sha'b. So again, phonology, but also in the lexicon, you have many examples in the lexicon. I didn't have time. Kamana, no, it'll be kaman. Of course, that's similar, but you'll have also some different words as well.
Right. Actually, that reminds me that this question of pronunciation reminds me of that passage in Naim Qatan's book, where there's a group of Jews, Iraqi Jews, sitting with a group of Muslim Iraqis, and they actually change the way they speak. They change their pronunciation. Is that because the Muslims wouldn't have been able to understand it?
Excellent question. We call it in linguistics accommodation.
Right.
So for example, when many years I taught in Atlanta in a university called Emory University, and I would have a student from the South with very, very heavy accent. So they did not want to distinguish themselves. They wanted to be part of the community, the standard community. So they would change their dialect to more standard American English because they would be afraid that they won't be understood. Same thing in Iraq. In Iraq, by the way, the pronunciation, we put Jewish languages on a continuum, and I would put Iraqi Judeo-Arabic closer to the more distinct than Egyptian Judeo-Arabic. Yes, it's much more distinct. They would use the qaf, and the Muslims would use the gaf. Very different. Sometimes you wouldn't understand. So we have three communities in Baghdad before 1948. the Jewish community, the Muslim community, and the Christian community on the same street sometimes. And what is interesting, that the Jews and the Christians understood the Muslims, but not vice versa. And it's very typical of minority-majority relationship. The minority always needs to understand the majority, otherwise they can't do business, they can't function. Arabs in Israel speak Hebrew. Jews in Israel don't speak Arabic. That's a fact, unfortunately. I wish I could change it. I'm trying to. I'm not successful. Youth is trying to. Other people are trying to. We're not successful. So yes, the Jews were the minority, and they would have to switch to Muslim because they knew the language of the majority in order for Muslim to understand them. So that quote that you have from the book is fantastic because it really brings to life the linguistic element that I just mentioned.
Right. Now, Sarah Manasseh has a question. To what extent do we have resources to have access by transliteration from written, that's Rashi, Judeo-Arabic, into standard Hebrew characters, and then translation, for example, into Hebrew and or English? There is such a large body of Judeo-Arabic religious texts and journals and newspapers.
So the question is, well, of course, you're talking about Rashi because that's how we wrote Judeo-Arabic in most of the time with Rashi characters. So, are you asking if there is a program that puts this and then comes out? Is that the question? There are many scholars in Judeo-Arabic who published a lot of, including myself, a lot of manuscript, a lot of text we deciphered the text, we published it in Hebrew letters and translated into English, right? I can give you an example. I even have here example, yeah. So this is, I'll get the book out. So this is, you can see here, this is from a book in 1992 that I published, and you see here, this is from Megillat Purim El Misriyin, the Purim scroll of Egyptian Jews. And you see, I have here, بعد تلك الأمور نوى أحمد باشا ليعمل سلطان في مصر. So here you see the publication of the Rashi into the Hebrew characters. We are developing now some computer programs that will be able to identify these things, so it'll be easier. I think it's in good stage now, but no automatic yet. But I think there will be. And a lot of the Judeo-Arabic religious texts and journal, a lot of scholars working on them. Not all of them have been published, but hey, we're looking for PhD students to do a lot of work, so we'll be happy.
Okay, just a question from Carol Isaac. She just wanted to know the name of the film. Of course, it's The Dove Flyer. I think the book was both Farewell Baghdad and The Dove Flyer, I think.
Yeah, and I think the movie in English is called, I think I mentioned it, I'll go to the I think it's called, let me see. It's called in English, Nissim Dayan did the movie in 2013, Farewell Baghdad.
That's right, yes.
Yes,
we showed it here in London. Actually, that seemed to be the thing that people remember most about that film, that it was in Judeo-Arabic. I don't think they remember the story very much. So a question from Sandra about Judeo-Farsi. I think you said that it was only in written form and not spoken. Is that correct?
No, I didn't say that, but we do have some Judeo-Farsi texts that are only in, you're right, that are only in the written form, but there is still some more modern spoken Judeo-Farsi that has some features. And I want to explain something. It's not yes or no. everything is on a continuum. For us as social linguists, even if there is minute difference, we are interested in the minute differences. And I can tell you that I remember that I was a fellow in Oxford in 2005, and this is when I started developing this theory of the Jewish linguistic spectrum. And I said, I know nothing about Dutch. I know nothing about Dutch Jews, but I'm telling you that since there is a community of about, I don't know, 10,000 Dutch Jews in Amsterdam, very proud. They send their kids to Israel. They're very high Jewish identity. They will sometimes speak Dutch in a different way. And that will be Judeo-Dutch. And there were no research by that year of Jewish Dutch. I'm telling you that now there are quite a few articles of Jewish Dutch. And I remember that after the lecture, one woman came to me and she said, yes, it's strange. Sometimes my parents say things that I don't understand. Because, and you know, even the very famous name from Amsterdam comes from Jewish Dutch. It's Mokum. Mokum, it's the name of Amsterdam in Dutch. And this is how it started. It started in Hebrew, Makom, then to Yiddish, Mokum, then to Jewish Dutch, then to Standard Dutch. So today, every person in Holland will know the term Mokum. Yeah, that's Amsterdam. Will they know that it originally comes from Hebrew? I doubt it.
Amazing. Okay. Aaron Foreman has a question, which he must be a linguist, I think. Would you discuss social or political causes and effects of the transition from phonetic orthography to orthography based on classical Arabic during Saadia Gaon's period?
It's a great question. So we know that before Saadia, we had the phonetic orthography, or for people who don't know, orthography is the spelling system. And it was great. It's great because if you add a yud or you add a vav, even if it's a short vowel, so you know that it's without a nekudot, but you know how to pronounce it if you have the vav and the yud. So it's fantastic for us as linguists. And then came Saadia Gaon's translation in the 10th century, and he was well versed in Standard Arabic, well-versed. He was very well educated, whereas before him, not necessarily Jews were well-versed in Standard Arabic. And they knew the dialect, but not necessarily the Fusha. But he was so influential all over the Arab Jewish world, and he wrote very close to Arabic. So for example, I'll give some example. The Saad would be Tzadi, okay? That makes sense. But then the dot is basically a sad with a dot on top, with a superlinear dot. So in Saadia took the tzaddik and he put a dot over the tzaddik, and that would be the dot. Whereas in the phonetic alphabet, it's a dalet, because it sounds like dalet. You see the difference? But Saadia was so influential that it started gaining prominence all over the Arab Jewish world, and people started more and more to adopt the Arabicized, what we call Arabicized orthography. Now, mind you, when I say adopting, very few people knew how to write. You know, you have to remember that. Talking about 2%, 3% of the elite. But even within the elite, some of them still didn't know Arabic characters, they only knew the Hebrew characters. So it's a very complex. But yes, Saadia was so influential in the Arab Jewish world that it started taking roots, this classical orthography or Arabicized orthography. And I thank you, Aaron, for this question.
Right. And Edward Cohen points out helpfully that the names of Jewish festivals have their own Judeo-Arabic equivalents. For instance, Purim is Mjalla, which comes from Megillah. Pesach is Eid al-Fitr.
Right.
And Hanukkah is Chanukah.
Very nice comment. I don't know all the names, but I do urge you to go online into, maybe I can share with you. Well, you can find it yourself on Jewish Languages website.
Yes.
I think jewishlanguages.org.
Jewishlanguages.org, right.
And I think there you will see some examples for names of Jewish festivals in different Jewish languages. So I think they have some nice data there that you can look. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually talking about websites, Eli Timman asks, could Benny point me to websites with different Haggadahs or Haggadot being sung so that he can compare it with his Jewish Iraqi version, with our Jewish Iraqi version?
It's a great question. I don't think our website with the different Haggadot. It would be lovely if you find some, please let me know. But I've had a long dream of doing comparison of Haggadot in all different Judeo-Arabic dialects, different Judeo-Arabic language varieties. Once I even proposed to do an atlas of ftir. Ftir is matzah in Egyptian Judeo-Arabic, but what is it in Tunisia, and what it is in this, what is it this, start looking and put it on a map. Yeah, we need a lot of funding for this. We need a lot of scholars and graduate students. But yes, if someone wants to pick up, I'll definitely be a consultant and definitely help. We need, there's a lot of stuff that we can still do to document and to do. And for that matter, I see Yehudit left. But she is also trying to, she's keeping some sort of a database online of different terms, not necessarily this, but other. So we need a lot of more work. Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah.
Okay, Sarah Manasseh asked an interesting question. In Baghdad, did Jews and Christians understand each other's dialects? Now, it's often said that Jews speak a dialect that's very similar to the Mosul dialect. But I mean, were there still differences?
That is very true what you're saying. I said that all of these, my social linguistic theory of religion is not complete, because a lot of it is connected to migration. A lot of it is connected to migration. And I want to just give, I call it, I call it migrated dialectalism or displaced dialectalism that we have in Jewish languages, because it's all connected to migration. So for example, I remember when I was in Atlanta, sometimes I would go to Starbucks and I see someone in front of me order, and he asked for coffee. I said, what? This is Atlanta. Why is saying coffee? Well, clearly it was a Jew who moved from New York to Atlanta and used a feature in his own Jewish English, which was taken from New York English and transported it to Atlanta. So this is called, and this is what happened in Mosul, from Mosul to Judeo-Arabic in Baghdad. And another good example is Judeo-Italian, where you see only in the south, in Italy, you will find lidonni, the women, instead of le donne, which is standard Italian. And only in center of Italy, you'll find 7 vowels in the dialect. Only in Judeo-Italian, you'll find those 2 features together, because of the movements and the migrations. You won't find it in non-Jewish Italians. But coming back to Baghdad, it is true that Jewish Baghdadi and Christian Baghdadi are much closer to each other than to the Muslim. And again, it has to do with migration, also with the feeling of minority. We are an oppressed minority, at least that was the feeling. I'm not going to get into the details. The feeling was that we're oppressed, and Christians also are oppressed by the, so let's put, this was part of it. But the whole issue of mutual intelligibility is a very, very difficult issue. And I think it needs to be viewed in terms of a continuum. It is more mutually intelligible than less, but not in absolute terms. You can't do that. What are you going to say? The Dutch and German are mutually intelligible, not mutually, to what degree? 70%, 60%, 50% more in phonology, less in syntax. We don't have mechanism of measuring it. So I'm always saying to be on the safe side, and I'm saying that Dutch and German are closer to each other than English and Chinese. Yeah, we can be sure of that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay. Yeah, I can't actually read your writing. Sorry.
Shuku has asked a couple of questions. The first one is, what book by Sadia Gowan do you recommend she should read?
What book? Yeah, definitely Kitab al-I'tiqadat, the book of beliefs is fantastic.
And she's just commented, I think you already had it down here, that in the Persian Hebraic language is only in written form and not structured.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. But I still claim, that is very correct, but I still claim that when Persian Jews with very strong Jewish identity get together, there will be some features in their Persian that are connected to, they'll use some words from Hebrew. They'll do something within the community.
Right. And Sarah has got a nice rhyme which they used to sing in Bombay, India. And Purim Mjalla Murgi Ka Galla.
Oh, nice.
That apparently is Hindi for neck of a chicken.
Yeah, that's very nice. That's very nice.
And
are you going, Lynn, are you going to keep the chat? Because there's some very nice comments.
Yes, yes, we will. We will.
We normally extract.
Yeah.
Show those two letters.
Yeah, in 1 second. 1 second. And Ricky has obviously published a book, 300 Ways to Ask the 4 Questions in the Haggadah. And he's got the 4 questions in a number of Jewish languages.
Wonderful.
His website is whyisthisnight.com. Thank you for that, Ricky.
Ricky, I've not seen it and I really thank you and I'm going to look into it. Thank you so much.
And Samish wants to know, do you have any statistics about the extent of how Judeo-Arabic is expressed in the written formal sense? For example, some may write in Hebrew letters to express Arabic or write in Arabic letters, but read it in Hebrew. For instance, Maimonides.
Yeah. Well, you know, formal Judeo-Arabic, more formal was, of course, during the classical period, during classical Judeo-Arabic, and of course people like Maimonides and Saadia Gaon who knew classical Arabic very well, you would see more formal Judeo-Arabic among those texts. So yes, definitely you're right. And most Judeo-Arabic texts are written in Hebrew characters. I must say that among the Karaites, especially in Egypt, they many times wrote in Arabic characters. And if you ask me, it's political. It's again, it's the social linguist in me, where I try to look at other things, at most sociology things that I think that they wrote in Arabic characters. First, it is known that their education in Arabic was better than the Rabbanites. Yeah, we know that about Cairo, Cairene Karaites. However, they wanted to say, this is a statement against Rabbinic Judaism. We write in Arabic characters. We don't want to write in Hebrew characters. So I think there is a political message there. And moreover, there are texts, Jeffrey Kahn from Cambridge published many of those texts where they would write Hebrew, like the Hebrew Torah, Bereshit bara Elohim, in Arabic characters. And they would put the Hebrew vocalization on the Arabic characters. Fascinating. Talking about mixed languages, this synergy between Judaism and Islam, that is so sad that in the 20th, 21st century, it's so contentious. Whereas for 1400 years before, there was so much synergy. Again, I don't want to be naive and say that it was all good, but it was much more connected,
Right.
much more connected.
Yeah, interesting point you made about the Karaites. We are actually going to have a session about the Karaites, and I will ask that question to our guest.
Who is coming to do the Karaites?
So he's the head of the Karaites in America. His name is David Ovadia.
Yeah, I know the
Yeah, yeah.
And actually on the call tonight, David, do you want to introduce yourself? Talk about your talk?
David there, that's great. I'd love to, because I want to tell him a story. Yeah.
To unmute. David, do you want to unmute yourself?
Where is David?
I'm right here.
Hi, David.
Hi, nice to meet you. Nice to hear your excellent presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Are you located in South San Francisco?
Yes, we are.
So I want to tell you a story. And maybe it's interesting for everyone, I think. So one of my advisors, I did my PhD in Berkeley in the 1980s, and one of my advisors was Zev Brinner. And Zeev used to come to South San Francisco to the Karaite community to help them organize. And I went along with him. I was in my 20s or my 30s. And I remember the beautiful services in Egyptian Judeo-Arabic by Karaite Jews. And we joined in, Amen, wa Amen. I just loved it. And I recorded some of your friends and family probably with a Judeo-Arabic. And we had a lovely time there. So thank you now for the hospitality that I had in the 80s in South San Francisco. You people should know, I'm sure David will talk about it when he talks about the Karaites, that there was quite a large migration of Egyptian Karaites, or Karaite Jews, if you want to say. They are called the Karaite Jews, from Cairo to South San Francisco, establishing a lovely community in South San Francisco.
Yeah, well, we look forward to hearing more from David. That's the 14th.
Please let me know the date, because I'd love to join.
Yeah.
Let me know the date.
The 14th of June.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the diary. Okay, so just having a look to see if there are any more questions. Meanwhile, my dear husband, who collects documents and envelopes and things, has some amazing documents which we know nothing about. I think we're going to have to scan these for you and send them to you.
One's Tunisia from about 1870 and one's Persia from about 1890.
Very nice.
The letters and the envelopes.
Right. Oops. Anyway.
Very nice.
There you go. Sorry.
No, not that one, darling. It's that one and the other one. That one is Tunisian one. Okay. And that's the Persian one.
Yeah. Okay then. Yeah, Persian one. So yeah, to be continued. Okay, so lots of nice messages. Excellent presentation, fascinating presentation. I don't think we have any more questions here.
I really want to say something. I so much enjoyed being with you. It's so lovely for me to see people who are actually interested in that. It's such a fascinating, people always like to talk about language. Language is such a fascinating topic. So, I'm so happy that you gave me the opportunity to present a little bit. And I'm so happy for the wonderful questions and comments that we received. And Lynn and Lawrence, really, it's amazing what you're doing. So I thank you for all this.
Well, I thank you, Benny. It's been such a pleasure to hear you speak about a very complex question, to break it down into sort of simple terms for the likes of us. And thank you very much. You've ranged across the world from Amsterdam right through to...
Good that you didn't give me more time, because then I would...
I know, thank you very much.
So
well,
much.
I don't want to keep you much longer, Benny, but there is just one more question, I think.
Yvonne, you've got your hand up. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question at the end?
Yeah. Or maybe we should just unmute everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you tell me, are there any Baghdadi Jewish Iraqi dictionaries that you could recommend? I don't think there are any in publication, but
Yeah, Jewish Iraqi. I'm trying to think.
or no, really, Arabic, Judeo-Arabic
In Iraq.
dictionaries.
Oh no, Judeo-Arabic dictionaries we have. We have the famous Judeo-Arabic dictionary that was published by Blau, Joshua Blau, but it's for medieval Judeo-Arabic. It's a very large dictionary. Unfortunately, and I told him, but I lost the argument with him. He's one of my professors. He died recently at the age of 100. He lived a great life. He lived a great life. And he published a dictionary, but it's all in Hebrew, from Judeo-Arabic into Hebrew.
So nothing in English.
But in English, you know, if, for example, if you're interested in Iraqi Judeo-Arabic,
Yes.
so Chaim Blank, again, one of my teachers, who was American actually. So Chaim Blank, although I taught at a Hebrew university, Chaim Blank published a wonderful book in 1964, very early, called Communal Dialects in Baghdad. and there is a lot of material there on the Iraqi or Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic with a list of vocabulary. So in some books, you'll find Hein Blanc, B-L-A-N-C, and it's called Communal Dialects in Baghdad, 1964, Harvard University Press. You can get it online, I'm sure. I'm sure by now you can get it online. If not, write to me, Benjamin.Hary at NYU EDU, and I can probably send you a copy of it.
There is something, there is another publication that I was told about recently. It was by a man called William Elias.
Yeah,
and I think he compiled a Judeo-Arabic English dictionary, and he wanted to get it published, but he didn't manage to find a publisher. So apparently his family donated a single copy to the Moshe Dayan Center, Tel Aviv University. So that does exist if anybody wants to consult it.
It's probably, I hope they put it online. I hope so.
That would be very.
Yeah, it's very, I'm a big proponent of sharing knowledge now. I don't think we have the same academic life as we had 20 years ago. And I think things should be shared all the time. It's very important.
Agreed.
Absolutely, that is the future, isn't it?
Yes, definitely, definitely.
So, thank you so much again, Benny.
Thank you again.
We might visit you when we're in Tel Aviv next time with these documents so you can translate for us.
Yes, yes, by all means.
By all means. They may end up in your library.
Okay. So,
thank you so much. I hope to see you again soon in one of the lectures.
Yes, we'd love to have you back. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
I think at this time I'm going to stop recording.
Yeah, and we will now do as we